Welcome into Vandy on SI. I'm Joey Dwyer. He's Graham Baco. I'm here at Hoover Met after Vanderbilt baseball's 19-year regional streak likely came to an end today. Graham, I don't think Corbin wanted to address it, I guess, directly, but when the press conference was over, he walked around the hallway. He shook every media member's hand and said, "Thanks for all you do." And to me, that was the indicator that he believes the streak is over and Vanderbilt baseball season is as well. I think that would align with the logic and what we understand about the NCAA tournament committee's thought process and selection process. But truly a historical day in Vanderbilt baseball history where Tim Corbin and company had the longest streak in college baseball. And this team appeared to be fighting for that streak to not end all season. It felt like it was kind of a weight on them down the stretch. And the thing that they were trying to avoid, the history that they were trying to avoid, has come in a way that I think they had feared for most of the season. Graham, really an interesting day within this program in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no question. And I think, it's very interesting, how you just mentioned that Corbin just shook every media member's hand. I think maybe that is the quiet part out loud where, like you said, maybe he didn't want to directly address it or directly say, it's over. But I think deep down, I believe certainly seems like Vanderbilt thinks, this season's over. And obviously, we'll find out the true answer on Monday. But I think, barring something unforeseen, something just absolutely wild happening on Monday's selection show. This season is over, and the 19-year regional streak is in fact over as well. It's just, you just think about the season, and one thing I think the biggest thing when you just think about the overview of the season, how it all played out, and everything. I think to me it all goes back to pitching and just the way that everything just took place. You start with the injuries. Even before the season even starts, you had pitching injuries, and then Austin Nye goes down in Game 11 of the season, and then from then on, it's like, well, you also had Brian England, or England
Eagle
Brian,
Brian, yeah.
England Brian, get that season-ending injury not too long after Nye did, and then it's like, from then on, the pitching depth was just thin. You had freshmen who like Corbin had said to us, even I believe at a post-game press conference a couple weeks ago, like a lot of these pitchers he didn't even plan on throwing them, and yet he had to because of these injuries. And then so you had inexperienced pitchers pitching all the time, and it just all snowballed ultimately to its ultimate demise today, where I think the season to me it eventually wrapped up in what was it, the seventh inning, eighth inning, when Florida had the
Yeah.
guys on second and third base, two outs, and then they hit a single up the middle. It bounces off the umpire, into the outfield. I'm not sure if Mike Mancini gets that ground ball or not. Probably, I wouldn't think he does, but he would have had an opportunity at it. Instead, the ball bounced off the umpire right into center field, and it easily scores two runs. And I think that was sort of maybe the microcosm or the ultimate sign of hey, this season is getting wrapped up now. So obviously, a historical day in Vanderbilt baseball history, something fans don't want to forget, but something that they're gonna have to sit with for the next for this upcoming off season now.
Yeah, I think you made an interesting point about Corbin maybe saying the quiet part out loud by not actually saying anything. To kind of support that, I'm looking in the dugout after the game. I kind of sat there. Corbin talked for almost 3 minutes, and once he was done, generally when he's done, as you know, everybody disperses and goes to the clubhouse and puts their stuff up. Braden Holcomb sat there on the rail for probably 2 or 3 minutes after that and just stared out at the field. Chris Maldonado did the same, and once Maldonado did it, a number of Vanderbilt players joined him. I think Austin Nye was there wondering what could have been if he was healthy. And I think a lot of Vanderbilt players in that moment were trying to internalize the history that they've just been a part of. They are the first group since 2005, Tim Corbin's third year at Vanderbilt, to not make the tournament. And they are a group that I think will live for a while in this program's history because they are the one that ended the streak. They're the one that couldn't get this thing to 20 years, and I thought they were talented enough to do it. They just couldn't close enough games. I don't know that they had enough pitching. And Graham, to your point, it kind of felt like they were delaying the inevitable by winning yesterday.
Mhm.
That's why we didn't do a show, because we thought them staying alive was less meaningful than the season ending, because it felt like they never had enough pitching to get this across the finish line here or even get it close to that point. It also felt like they didn't have enough consistency as a whole or enough know how to win this. to get this thing to Sunday or to even get it to Saturday. That just, I don't know. It felt like they were delaying the inevitable the whole time. And as a result, they're going to be the first team since a lot of these guys were born or before that to not make the tournament. Tim Corbin, I think, has wanted to express over the last couple of weeks how he's not disappointed in those guys in particular. He's not necessarily telling them that they're failing Vanderbilt baseball. He's actually telling them the opposite. But I think that's going to be on a lot of those guys' minds, and they think they have a good team next year, but they can't get that streak back for 20 more years, Graham.
Yeah, no question. And I mean, I think, delaying the inevitable, I think that's a great way to put it. And I'm gonna have a story on the site, make sure to check the site and subscribe to the channel as well.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have a story on the site just about the pitching, how it just truly just was never enough. And it's been just the alarm bell going off all season, and the lack of depth, the inexperienced pitchers. And then I think, when we came into this week, this SEC tournament week, I mean, we had all thought about, what's going to happen with the pitching, what's going to happen, and how's it going to be managed if, let's just say, that they even I think even if they just get to Wednesday, because everyone knew that Fennell was going to be throwing game one, and a guy like Kranzler was going to finish it off, and then like right after that, we're like, okay, so who's going to pitch tomorrow? We think Bear's going to pitch, but obviously he's not going to pitch the whole game. So who do they bring in after that? And then if they were to win Wednesday, then what's going to happen the next day? So I think even just the question alone of what happens on day two, I think, number one, just shows just the lack of pitching depth, but I think more importantly shows like the sign or a symptom of a bigger issue, which is,
Yeah.
of course, the pitching that it was all season. So it's obviously I wasn't in the press conference. I'm not entirely sure what Corbin had said. I mean, did he comment on the pitching? What can you say about that?
Yeah, really the only thing he said was in relation to a question about Corbin Reynolds, where
Mhm.
he admitted like this was a tough staff for Corbin Reynolds to catch. And I actually thought that verbiage was interesting because he basically declared that the season's over and it was a interesting season for Corbin Reynolds to catch rather than it has been or it is. He basically said it was done there. And I think to your point, the pitching is almost emblematic of a bigger issue here. Like they wanted Jacob Faulkner and Nate Taylor to come in and really be guys that they could rely on. Taylor was the third starter to start the year. Faulkner started some games for him. I thought their evaluations were a bit flawed in the portal. I don't think either of those hit the way that they would want them to. And I think that leads you to think, like, I don't know, are they going to have to change some of their mindset towards how they approach pitching in the portal? Or are these one-offs? Tim Corbin wouldn't answer whether he needs to make changes in the offseason or what exactly those changes will be once he does an audit of the program. He did say that he's going to do that, but I don't know. I think it's interesting to think about the path forward here. And to me, the streak is interesting in that when it ends, it makes you do all types of introspection.
Mhm.
And I think Tim Corbin's going to do that in terms of what are they doing to operate? Obviously, they're going to have a general manager next year, which is different. And I don't know if that would have happened if the streak wasn't in jeopardy at that point. That that was in the works for 3 or 4 weeks before the job was even posted. So
Mhm.
it's an interesting thing here, but Graham, I wonder if this is the straw that breaks the camel's back on some of the portal stuff and maybe some of how they approach things. I think Tim Corbin is still going to try to run this in terms of his values and align it with those and how he wants to build a program. Also, though, I think he's got to look at this year and say, I'm a competitor that wasn't good enough and we really had to pay for it. One more thing, too, about his answer on the streak. I thought it was interesting. Like he did acknowledge once the streak's gone, I think people are going to start to realize that it wasn't all that easy to accomplish. And I think this year's team is evidence of that. They actually got more talented, and the streak ended after being the number one overall seed. It truly is a remarkable feat, and I thought Tim Corbin did have some good insight on what it means, and honestly, what it means that it's likely ending as well.
Yeah, and I think, for Vanderbilt fans, when you watch this program, over the past 2 decades, I think you kind of take for granted how, the tournament appearance and just how easy it is or it feels like it is easy to get there when in actuality, it's not, right? For every program, college basketball, college baseball, these storied programs where, it feels like they're in the NCAA tournament every single year, it just kind of feels like second nature in a way where it's like, oh, you just go out there, do your thing, play ball, and by the end of the season, you're going to get to the NCAA tournament. But like it takes a lot of hard work. Like these 20-year plus streak, 19-year, 20-year plus streaks are not common to come by, and for a good reason. Like obviously it is not it like to develop this type of consistency over the longevity that it has. It is so difficult to do, and obviously now Vanderbilt started back at back at ground zero, and in terms of the streak. And I think Corbin, and he's going to get this program back to the tournament. There's no question about it. But obviously with this season and just the way it's played out and just going into the offseason, because this is a very important offseason now for Vanderbilt baseball in terms of how do they structure the roster, how do they look at the transfer portal. I think the transfer portal is the biggest thing because I mean, again, when we said it before, when we look at Twitter and social media and the sort of conversation amongst Vanderbilt fans, it's like Vanderbilt fans are talking the whole season just about the lack of additions through the portal on the pitching side of things, right? Obviously, they add a guy like Logan Johnstone to the batting lineup, but pitching wise, they just did not really they didn't they left a lot to be desired in terms of pitching through the transfer portal. I think that has to be, I think if you're Vanderbilt, that's got to be the top thing on your priority list is to beefing up that the pitching room, especially when you have a season like this. Now, seasons or excuse me, now injuries are like you can't predict them, but you're going to have to add to beef up the pitching enough to where you can compromise if a guy or two or three or four even gets hurt. I mean, because you're going to need that because injuries are part of baseball, injuries are part of sports. So you're gonna need a backup plan. And so Vanderbilt's got a very important offseason ahead of it, especially with the transfer portal.
Yeah, to me, it's not even about them hitting the portal harder. I think they
Mhm.
have to get it right this
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
Like I look at their class, and Jacob Faulkner was, I think, probably not quite as good as they thought. Nate Taylor certainly wasn't as reliable or as good as they thought he would be. Even Tim Corbin was talking about he's not a guy who walks a ton of guys, and then Nate Taylor continued to walk a lot of guys. Carter Johnstone didn't give them all that much. And Graham, it felt like Logan Johnstone was really one of the only successes of the year in terms of their evals and things along those lines. I think that's an area that has to be stronger if they're going to supplement this core and get them back to Omaha or get them to a deep run. But for now, I think we're in the position where we question can they ever get back to a place like that? And I think that seems a little bit rash considering they were the number one overall seed last year. But it's been a long time since they've done that and they've kind of bottomed out here. Interesting kind of crossroads for Vanderbilt baseball where it's either you sink to this level with more frequency or you use this as a catapult to get back to Omaha and do the things that this program is used to doing. For now, though, they haven't done it in a while, and this again was the farthest they've ever been from it. This is the least successful team they've had in the past 20 years, Graham.
Yeah, yeah, no question. And again, like we said, very important off-season head. And I think you mentioned a good point when you talk about the evaluations of these guys. That is true. Like that is the most important thing. I mean, you can add a high volume of players, but it doesn't matter if your evaluations aren't right. If they turn out wrong, then you're kind of screwed in that sense. So, yeah, no, evaluations are certainly the most important thing. And I think. I mean, I think Vanderbilt or Tim Corbin has certainly earned, I guess, the benefit of the doubt these last 2 decades. Like, I don't think this is, going to be the norm, the new norm for Vanderbilt baseball. As long as Tim Corbin is a head coach, I think Tim Corbin is certainly he knows what he's doing. And I think, after the introspection and after roster construction, I got to think he's going to do anything and everything that he can to get this program back to what it is and what fans have been used to seeing over these past 2 seasons or
Absolutely.
2 decades.
Yeah, absolutely. Graham, a day that I think we'll remember for a long time as we think about Vanderbilt baseball and the scope of it and everything that it's accomplished. You have to acknowledge everything that they've done to get to this point and just how remarkable the streak was. You also got to acknowledge that there's some work to be done to get back to the level that this program is used to being at. And man, it's going to be an interesting offseason
Hmm.
in Nashville. But for now, I'm Joey Dwyer. He's Graham Bacco. We'll have it covered for you at Vandy on SI throughout the offseason. But for now, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the channel. We're going to turn to football mode in a few days here. But for now, be on the site. We got a lot of content coming today from what Tim Corbin said I was sitting next to the dugout and kind of observed the whole scene there. So we'll have something on that too. And then the classic obituary comes tomorrow morning. But for now, I'm Joey Dwyer. He's Graham Bacco. Thank you guys for watching again. God bless. We'll talk soon. Peace.